Meeting of the Public Services Commission to order. Also, we do not have a quorum yet. We're going to have one in about 10 minutes, so we're just going to continue with the business as it is without any voting until we get a quorum here. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. We need somebody to take the roll call. Roll call completed then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tam usually took the roll call, so,
Okay.
yep, we'll make note of it.
Approval of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
Second. Okay. The agenda's been approved. Approval of the minutes of 3/21/22.
I'll move the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, and then, can we approve the minutes?
No, you can't approve the minutes, and as far as the agenda is concerned, you can't vote on the agenda approval either until you have
Okay.
your quorum. So what I would recommend that you do is, now that you have a motion and a second, you can table those items until your fourth gets here.
We will table the minutes and the approval of the agenda until we have a quorum, if we have a quorum tonight. Open forum, we have no one in the audience. Presentations, Ryan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So once every spring, I like to give a construction update on all the projects that are either happening this year or maybe touch on a few really big ones that we're really into the design of and working on for next year. I think it's always important for this commission to know, what's happening in town as you're out in the public, right? If people have questions about things that are going on, you're kind of up to speed on some of the bigger projects that we have going in the city. So I'll run through a variety of both, roadway and utility projects, and also touch on some of our more major development projects as well. The first one I want to talk about is our 2022 mill and overlay project. This is something we started last year, doing really specific mill and overlays. We're not doing utility work. We're not really doing much curb work unless there's something very major failed. We're trying to look at roads that are about 15 to 20 years of life. And we're going in and just replacing that top 2 inches of asphalt. So we did this up in the Timber Ridge neighborhood last year at a much lower cost than like a pavement management. A pavement management is anywhere from $1 million to $2 million a mile, depending on what we're doing. And this is about $200,000 a mile just to get that new asphalt layer on. And it was really effective last year. Last year's was about a 16, 18-year-old roadway. These roadways are right about 20 years. 20 years ago, they had pavement management. Something that happens, the cracks come right back through. It is a mill and overlay, so the cracks, the bottom 2 inches, right, that had cracking, those reflect back through. Some of the more major ones, but we do a crack seal the year later. But instead of, maybe getting to 25 years of life and then having Gary's crew do a thin overlay and then doing like a full pavement replacement for that $1 million a mile at 30 to 32, we're hoping to get closer to 40 years of life out of these roadways. So really extend that life at a pretty low cost. So we're hitting the Thompson Grove neighborhood over the next 2 years. There was a lot of variability in oil prices that everyone knows over the last couple months. So when we bid it out, when we put it out to bid, we had these light blue and dark blue areas that were kind of extra alternates in the bid. The green was the base bid area that we were doing. And this work actually came in still higher than last year, but lower than what our worst case scenario was, because when we put it out to bid, oil was like 140 bucks a barrel, and when we bid it, it was like 100. So we were able to award the light blue and the dark blue as well. We did look at doing Hamlet Park. That's why that was an alternate, but there is some more improvements at Hamlet Park potentially coming down the line. So we know the parking lot would get used pretty heavily with those potential improvements, so we didn't want to mill and overlay at this time. And then the red, that's actually a neighborhood that's going to have their final wear course put on with the homes built. We bid it out as an option to have it with the project and have the developer pay for it, of course, but they got their own bids as well, and they felt they could have a better pricing doing it on their own, so that was not awarded. One thing I will mention we're doing with this project is for Hadley Avenue. This is actually something we'll bring back to the commission in the fall, is right now it's 12-foot lanes. They've gotten a little wider over the years, maybe 12 and a half with where the striping actually lands today, and only about a 6 to 7 foot, or 5 to 6 foot, I should say, striped shoulder. We're actually going to restripe them as 11-foot lanes. That's something a lot of cities are going to in these residential streets. It has been shown from some other studies, nothing that we've done yet, that does drop speed limits just a little bit. We do get a lot of speeding complaints on Hadley Avenue. So not only will we have the narrower lanes to hopefully help with the speeding, but then we'll have a wider parking lane. Right now, like a pickup truck, if it parks there, it's actually hanging over into the drive lane, and it won't once we're done. So we're actually collecting data before, and we'll collect data after to see how effective it is, and we'll actually bring that back for a presentation for the commission, because we do want to look at other streets in town. And this is kind of a test case, but we want to get input from the commission on if we should really do that all around town and on like Ideal Avenue, 76th Street, and streets like that. A couple of big projects that are starting up or will be starting up. There's actually two different projects on the screen. One is the 100th, 105th, and Ideal Avenue improvements. That's called the darker yellow. The blue boxes numbered 1 through 3. And the other one is a South District Street and Utility Improvement. That is the green boxes 4 through 5. I show them all on one screen because they're pretty much right next to each other. The first set of the blue boxes, that's actually being done with the North Point development, the big distribution center development that's been approved. They are actually doing that work. It was designed by the city, it's inspected, managed by the city, but it's actually their funds paying for the project. And this is a 2-year project that they're doing. They're starting down on the number 1. That's 105th Street. That's actually going to be a new city street that will go west of Ideal Avenue, right kind of where those overhead power lines, the big transmission lines cut across Ideal Avenue. That'll serve as kind of the south access to their site, ending at a roundabout that they will build. And that work's going to be starting up soon. They've been getting pipe deliveries. That'll happen this year. Number 2 for 100th Street, that's going to be more of a mill and overlay east of Ideal, because that's only about a 19-year-old road. It's going to get restriped with a center left turn lane. Right now it's kind of unusual where I believe it's 2 westbound lanes, 1 eastbound lane. So right now when the trucks at renewal are trying to go left in as they jockey around from one site to another, they're in that 1 through lane, and it's been kind of a problem for cars. So we're actually going to provide a left turn lane, continuous bay where they can use that and get out of traffic to get onto their site. And then west of Ideal Avenue, as you go on those number 2 blue boxes, that's going to be a full reconstruction, and also having that left turn lanes and right turn lanes for North Point and the other developments in the area. Right now it's just a very narrow 2-lane roadway. The goal is to start that this year, but there's a lot of private utility conflicts with Xcel and Comcast and CenturyLink that need to be relocated, so that may take long enough that this work rolls into next year. But I guess the big key is, especially with Ideal Avenue, 100th Street going to the east, if they do it, that's not a road closure. So that work they may do, that mill and overlay, and then they may wait to do the work west of Ideal next year potentially, which will have some closures with it. The last stretch is Ideal Avenue, which is also going to get upgraded to that urban roadway, curb and gutter, trails on both sides, and also the left turn lanes and right turn lanes to handle the truck traffic. That's a new road that was just redone with the water main extension project in 2020. So we're not throwing that out. We're just widening it and adding another lift of asphalt. So we're going to really utilize that gravel and pavement that was, new stuff built just 2 years ago. And that'll be in 2023. And really knowing that's the only way out of the neighborhood, that'll remain open during construction, which is also the intent. Traffic can use that existing paved section as they widen the road and then build it up. And then going to the South District Street and Utility Improvements, that's the green one. That is a city project. That's going to be an assessment related to some residential development. That's going through the approval process right now. It's Lennar and a Summergate development in that area. And for new development, when you have more than 30 units, you need 2 points of access. Obviously, River Acres has 1 point right now. That's been like that for a long time, and there's nothing that was changing with that. But now with new homes going in, the city did require that this second point of access be built for them to move ahead. We don't want to just add more traffic to Ideal without another way out and to meet that fire code. So this is something that all the properties in that area that are developing are paying assessments because they all will utilize that road, and then the city is building it with those assessments. That work will be 2 years as well. We're bidding it right now. Number 4 area, that'll be built this year going north, and then the number 5 area, that's with the realignment of 100th and Ideal, or Hadley, sorry, that'll be done in 2023. Once again, that's got a lot of private utility relocations that we need to take care of before we can do that work. And the reason for that, you know, realigning of everything, that's following a county plan. The county actually intends to take over 100th Street, going all the way down to Great Cloud Island in the future. And they called for that road to be realigned where it won't be, you know, the right angles hitting Hadley and 103rd Street. So a much safer roadway in the future. And just thinking about North Point, this is in that same area that I just showed you. Their phase 1 is under construction. You can probably see those big berms that they're building along 100th Street for screening of their site, which I think will work really well. Now that they're there, you can see how large those 10 to 12 foot berms are. But out of the 9 buildings that got the master plan approval, these first 2 buildings highlighted in yellow, that's what was approved for their first phase, which is under construction right now. So they actually want to have those buildings done and ready to build them out for end users by December. So right now they're just moving dirt, but they're actually going to get those completely done in the ground, parking lots paved before winter is their intent. So they move pretty quickly on that. And then they'll actually have tenants, and then they would do the build out of those tenants, which would be in 2023. Another bigger project is our Goodview Avenue water main extension. This is up along 70th Street. I just kind of highlighted in blue the neighborhood where this is happening. And the city will be bringing water down from Granada Avenue to feed 41 properties. These have PFAS in their wells, so it was in the state. And I'll talk a little about it more later on, but the state of Minnesota got that settlement from 3M, $850 million. That's going to be used in the East Metro to build new treatment plants, connect homes to water, and homes that are just far too isolated will get their own in-home water filters. So this one the state identified that was close enough to our water system for us to connect it. So this work will happen starting this year. Some of it may go into next year. With everything going on in the world right now, water main, among other things, is just really hard to get a hold of. Even standard 8-inch water main has months and months of lead time with issues with steel and iron right now. So we do want to get all the work done on 70th Street. There is homes directly do connect off of 70th Street, and then it'll go into the neighborhoods this fall for sure, but if that pipe is a little behind schedule, it'll go into 2023 to complete it. There will be a closure on 70th because they do have to do 2 crossings, and with the bedrock they have, the county, you know, from a safety perspective, there was concerns about trying to keep one lane of traffic open. So it'll be about a 7-day closure later in the summer on 70th Street for this project. Another big one we have, it's not too exciting, it's just a yellow line on a map, but this is our South District trunk storm sewer. This also serves that whole southern area of the city where we have all the street work going on, where we have North Point going on. That whole area is flat as a pancake. So while they'll do their own ponding, they need a trunk storm sewer to get the water somewhere, right? Once it leaves the ponds, and they have their rate control and their water quality to clean the water. So this is following our plan where we collect area charges from developers to pay for this. So the city will be building this storm sewer pipe from Ideal Avenue down to a public water that's on 3M property. This is out to bid right now, or will be out to bid, I should say, at the end of this week, and we'll take bids. And we actually can't start this work till August 1st. There's some potential endangered species working with the DNR that have like a nesting period or something along those lines, so we can't start till August 1st. But we want to get a bid and award it in June because this is big pipe with big structures, and the concrete's fine, but the rebar, once again, steel rebar is just impossible to get. So it's about 8 to 12 weeks to build all these structures where it used to be 4 weeks. So we want to get that awarded so contractors can get that ball rolling. So it's really put a hamper on the construction industry this year. All this material availability and pricing has been a real challenge for us. Another project the city is undertaking, this is at 95th Street in Jamaica. It's our TGP 14 regional pond. If that's not an engineering term, I don't know what is, but it's a Thompson Grove Pond 14 is what this is. It's a regional pond that we've had on our plan now for quite some time. A lot of those older sites there, like the marshaling yard and the old truck hauling site, they don't have any ponding. They were built before that was required, and all that water went right down what we call the flume. It's one of our drainage channels, right into a wetland and down to the river. So we've been wanting to do rate control on this to really hold that water back during big floods. We had some issues in 2019 down in this area because of all the rain and snow melt and all that stuff came together. So this is another project to really help manage that. But we had about 150,000 yards of dirt that we had to move to dig this out, and hauling that away would be, very, very expensive. So next door is about 17 acres of development property that was pretty low on dirt. So we were able to work with that landowner to just move the dirt right over there at a cost of, $3 a cubic yard instead of, $10 to $12 a yard to haul it away. So it really saved the city a lot of money to do that. So that's why all the trees were cleared and it all looks very flat and level. It was kind of building a building pad for the future. All those trees were inventoried, so a future developer will still pay tree mitigation like any other developer would and have to replant trees on their site due to the trees that were cut down. Here's a project that Zach's been working on, our Parks Director. The Glacial Valley Park. This is a new community park that his team has been working on. This is our first community park that we built in town since 2006, 2007 with Peter Thompson Park. That would have been our last community park that we worked on. So this is in the northwest corner of Keats Avenue and Ravine Parkway. This will be everything that a community park normally has. You've got a ball field, ball diamond, soccer football field, pickleball courts, basketball court, and hockey rinks and a playground. And it's going to have a pretty nice park building as well that his team is working on. Much bigger and more amenities than a typical park building that they can lease out for different events and things like that. So this project was just bid and awarded by the city council, and it was planned to start this year, and this will finish up next year. Parks are usually a 2-year project just because of the time it takes to establish all those fields with all their grass. A big project for next year that we've been working on, and we actually started this a little while ago, is redoing the East Point Douglas and Jamaica Avenue area, which I think everyone's well aware of is a pain to drive in a lot of different times. It's a challenging project to try and address because we have very limited right-of-way. And the roadway geometry, like East Point Douglas, how it has that big curve around the strip mall there, we can't change that, so we have to work with what we have. And we want to make this not just good for now, but for the next 20 years of growth, right? As the city continues to build out. It's kind of interesting. We look back at the kind of some of the approvals and kind of what happened after that, and there was already complaints about traffic in like 1998 in this area. So 24 years later, we've been growing quite a bit, and obviously everyone knows it's still a lot of issues right now. Jamaica and East Point, that'll remain as a signal. Intersections that large, that many lanes. Really challenging to do a roundabout at something like that, but we are adding turn lanes in every direction is what we're doing. So the issues you have there now are kind of twofold. One is there's just not enough turn lanes, so you get these long stackings of the left turners, but also the signal that's just to the east for Cub and Target is just too close. You can't have signals that close together. There's just no way for them to operate. They're only 200 feet apart. I mean, it's not even a regular downtown city block. So that's going to be going to a right in, right out, and then we'll have a roundabout just where call it the uncontrolled access, right, where your kind of direct way into Cub is, or that Grove Plaza Center will be a roundabout. And a couple reasons for that roundabout. One, I mean, it just does work well. And it's important as we have more and more traffic with that hard curve there to slow people down coming into that. But the other thing is with the right in, right out now, you can actually, if you're at, let's say, Wendy's, right, you can go out where it's now right out, you can take a right, just wrap around the roundabout, go back to Jamaica Avenue. You're gonna get to Jamaica faster than you do now, because now you're sitting there waiting to go left. Then you get a green to go left, and everyone's backed up down East Point, so it's a real problem. So with the roundabout, it really opens up all those movements for cars in every direction. And really with the traffic counts we have there, they are pretty balanced, and we like to have that for roundabouts. Yeah.
The Holiday gas station, are you gonna close off the entrances or exits right there on that?
So that's the design right now, is
Okay.
because they are so close. I mean, since it's just a right in, right out. You know, they could stay. It's just they dump right into turn lanes, which conceptually you'd say, oh, they won't go out if they don't have room. But what happens is cars just kind of force it, and then they're angled across like 3 turn lanes, and then they back everything up again. So it is a real safety issue to have them that close. But things like that, those really fine details that affect each site, we're really going to work with the businesses closely on that. We've already started that. We've been meeting one-on-one with all these owners that really have the impacts. We've also been, you know, noticing everyone else. Let's say on the west side, there's not a lot of impacts in terms of long-term changes, but we're keeping all the businesses informed. But meeting one-on-one with Cub, with Target, with Holiday, and kind of working through those design components. We do need right-of-way from most of these businesses, so we're going to be working through that this whole year. Hopefully we'll get some private utility relocates done this year, so they're out of our way before next summer. Hopefully they can get that done in the fall, and then we can have one full construction season to really knock this project out. Some of the work that doesn't impact traffic, you know, probably will happen in 2024. You know, some of the restorations, some of the tree plantings on the sides, just because it is a lot of work. It's about with all the right-of-way, with the design, it's like a $13 million project. So by far the biggest project the city's ever undertaken.
I've got a question on, are we acquiring a new right-of-way
We are, yes.
from the
Yep.
property owners?
Yep.
Is that going to affect where they have to have a variance after the fact? Or I guess my question is that if they go to want to do anything else, well, with us taking this land, is that going to affect them as to what they can and cannot do versus before when they had the land?
Yep, and that's something, that's a good question. That's something we're working with our planning department on. Things that you think about, like parking lot setbacks. What's nice now is this is all our mixed-use zoning, so now it's all 0 setbacks for parking. So you're right, if we didn't have that and we required like a 10-foot setback, now they would have to have a variance, which we would give them because it's being created by this project. Parking's another one. You know, some of these projects, you know, properties will have less parking now than they did before. So we will, you know, they would be grandfathered in. They wouldn't be penalized if for some reason they don't meet parking codes, for example. So we'll analyze all that, and we'll work with the businesses. We have been, because they've been giving us good input on maybe where parking works and where parking doesn't work and things like that.
So
So
I guess I'm more concerned with, like, let's say, I'll just use the Holiday store. If they decide that they want to, that under the old requirements, they were allowed to put an addition onto that building, and now that we've taken the land away, that they've lost some parking, and then they have to have X number of more parking for it, that if they have excess.
Yep.
And now that they don't, will that impact them as far as that goes, or will that be documented someplace so they can say, well, you know, we had this when we first built this, and
Yep. Yeah, that will be documented. Yep. So through all these easement agreements, because we are doing appraisals and we'll work with all these businesses on these, we would document all that. A big one is like Cub. You know, how that's a good situation of where, you know, they have a lot of extra parking and maybe in the future they want to sell a little piece for like a small drive-through coffee shop or something. So we will document that with them and make sure we're not hindering things like that. So. And actually, if we did, I mean, then some of that comes into compensation. It's part of the appraisal process if it's, you know, impacting their property in that way.
okay.
But it'll be lengthy. We've actually hired a right-of-way specialist. That's what she does. She's very good at acquiring right-of-way and working with businesses on projects like this. She's working with a project with Anoka and MnDOT right now, so she'll be a big help in working through all those issues.
Okay.
Any other questions on this project? Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind, write-in and write-outs. I know that they're successful in some areas and not successful in areas, or other areas, and then the one I'm thinking of is off of 70th and Hinton area.
Yeah.
And so that was a write-in, write-out, and now you guys switched it out. But I was curious if you, I mean, I'm sure you have, but the feedback on, is it good that it's gonna work here?
Yep, so in terms of like working, in terms of people like following the rule, this will actually be medians the whole way. So
Okay.
you actually won't be able to cross to the far side. That's the biggest issue with write-in, write-outs, is if you just put like the pork chop in,
Yep.
people can just cut around it and
Cut
still
around it.
take the left. This will actually be full medians from the roundabout all the way to Jamaica.
Okay.
So there will be no way to cross it.
Yep.
And that left turn was just too close. We did try and look at like a left in, because we want to keep as much access as we can, but yeah, it really created more issues with our traffic modeling in the future.
That's what I was worried about.
Yep.
And
yep.
then the only other one that I topic, this is the first time I'm seeing it, so
Yep.
I'm sorry if I'm asking new questions. I'm a fan of the roundabouts. I like the roundabouts. But when I look at this roundabout really close to the light, do you envision like being a lot of backup from the light into the roundabout area?
We do not. We have looked at that really closely with the extra lanes and with this one being, a couple hundred feet back from that signal. And the other thing now is with this signal at Jamaica having all these extra turn lanes, we'll cycle through it a lot faster than it does right
Okay.
now. So basically it's designed that at like 2040, because we do model out to 2040, that's where you might to start see, stuff getting close to the roundabout
Okay.
when the city's closer to full build out.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
No, that's a good question. And this is, I should stress, this is what we call a preliminary design. It's by no means the final.
I'm glad you,
Yep, so we just started meeting with businesses, and we'll actually work through final design all the way through next winter and probably bid it out next January, February.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? This is a big one. Well, this one will probably be back. I think we'll be back in the fall to talk about this project and get more feedback from the commission as we're working through the final design as well. Today, I just wanted to give you a chance to see it and kind of get your arms wrapped around it, and we'll certainly be back to talk about it more, so. All right, and the last project to talk about, and this is just more of a quick overview, because actually our project manager who's working on this will be back in the fall as well to give a more in-depth overview. But this is our 3M settlement agreement. So this is that money that the state got, and that, there was a 3 or 4 year process with all the East Metro communities looking at, Woodbury, Cottage Grove, Oakdale, Lake Elmo, everyone who has PFAS in their water and how they're going to manage it. In the end, Cottage Grove is getting about $60 to $70 million in capital funding to do a couple different things. 2, we're going to build 2 permanent water treatment plants that will treat really all of our wells that need it. All of our wells except for 2 that are way in the north part of town need treatment. Right now we have those 3 temporary treatment plants that are getting us by just fine, but those are meant to just be in place till the permanent ones are here. The first one, the big one, will go right behind the central fire station. That's that red WTP, kind of right in the middle of the screen. That'll treat the city's 7 intermediate zone wells, we call them. We actually have 4 pressure zones in the city, 3 that we're using right now. So it's kind of like 3 different water systems because we have so much elevation change across town. They really act in a lot of ways independently of each other. We do have boosters and stations to let water flow in case of emergency, but they really act independent. So that one will treat all those intermediate zone wells around the high school. In the future, if we do have contamination in the north part of town, it will be designed for expansion to treat our high pressure zone wells. That's at 11 and 12, if you can see it on the north end of the screen. And the other one will be in the way south part of town at Ideal Avenue and 110th Street. That's where we were able to acquire land for our low zone treatment plant, and that'll treat well 10, that's right by Van Meter or the old Werner Electric, and then it'll treat a new well 13, that'll be right next to the treatment plant. The reason for that, wells 1 and 2, they're in the Thompson Grove neighborhood. They're small producing wells, and they're on very small lots, so we can't treat them directly, and they're so far away, it's too much money to try and run a water line to a treatment plant. So the state's paying to abandon those wells and drill a new one to replace them. That's the one we're working on first. That's the one we kind of need sooner, just based on how our PFAS levels are. So that one you'll see starting construction next year.
Are they doing it already, digging a well
So right,
on 110?
yeah, yep. So yeah, right now what they're doing is what we call as a test well. So what we want to do is we drill a very small diameter well down to the depth that we're looking at, and they want to what's in the water. We know there's PFAS there, but how much PFAS, and then what's the production like? How much pumping can we get out of it? So that's what's going on right now. It's just a little well being drilled by trout, and then we'll drill the full well here. It'll depend. I mean, there are areas in River Acres that don't have PFAS levels over the limit. So if we happen to find that this is a clean location, we'll drill it sooner because we can just start using it then. If it doesn't, which is the assumption, then it'll just be built in conjunction with that treatment plant. And like I said, this is all paid for by the state. We're really just getting going on all these projects. The Goodview Avenue project, that was one that we got going on sooner. And then we are going to be installing what we call a raw water line from well 10. That's that light blue line that goes down 100th Street and down to the water treatment plant. That's where a lot of development's happening, so we want to get that line in the ground now before the development happens so we can feed well 10 down to that treatment plant once it's online. So that work will be happening this summer.
Got a question on well
Yeah.
one.
Yep,
So we're gonna abandon well one and well two.
correct, yep.
Are we gonna get rid of the tower there then too, or is the tower gonna be, still part of the system?
So for now, the tower will be still part of the system. We do need it because that area of town is very isolated. It's a lot of small mains that go to it, so that tower kind of acts on its own for good pressure in that area. The state did include money though to connect a trunk line up to that Grange area.
Okay.
Once that's done, and once we have a new larger tank that it's been in our plan, we technically wouldn't need that tower anymore. So at that point, it could be decommissioned and taken down. That's probably 4 to 5 years away.
Okay, and the well house that's there, will that stay?
That will go away, yep. So that'll be paid for by the state to take out offline. So.
Is there any thought on, obviously that was our first well, our first well house, and it was also our first constable or police station. Is there any thought on keeping it just for nostalgic?
There could
Or
be,
no?
I mean, because there's really not, it's such a small piece of land that you can't really do anything else with it. So
Right.
it could be, the state definitely wants the well parts removed and sealed. But I mean, if it was something that we wanted to have from like a historic first well,
Yeah,
it definitely could be
that
part
was
of a
That was the
conversation.
constables, at that time, there wasn't a police station, or a police department, because they was part of St. Paul Park, but that was the constable's
Yep.
office, because as kids, we used to go hang out with them.
Yep, oh, that's
So
cool.
If you took that tower down, would you have to put like a cell tower there? Because they're all the cell phones. are
Yep,
attached.
so that's another part of it, is you would have to have some kind of monopole or something realistically to have, and maybe it wouldn't be a monopole, sometimes when it's in town, it's got a little different design, but yep, you might want something to still have that revenue for the water tower leases, so. That's good feedback on the well house, we can keep that in mind, because I don't think there's anything requiring that the building go away by any means, so. And a lot of people do like that water tower too, it's kind of our original water tower, right, so there's some nostalgia there. Any other questions on these projects? Like I said, we'll have our project manager back who's been working on the daily in and out of this as well later down the line when things are really going, to talk about the water treatment plants and what we're doing with those, so.
The title says 3M settlement agreement.
Yep.
What's
Yeah,
that?
yep, so that's what happened in 2018. So the state had a lawsuit against 3M, and that was for the PFAS. And when they got their $850 million, that's what they titled it. So it was a settlement agreement is the official term that we need to use, because that's kind of the legal sense that
Sure,
as
okay.
the attorneys worked it out, so.
Thank you.
Yep, so that's our $850 million, which after all the legal fees and everything for the state, I think it was $700 million, so. But it was still a good chunk of money, that'll do good work in the East Metro,
Good.
so. All right, well, that's all I had for the commission tonight, so if there's no other questions, like I said, we'll be back with some more information as these projects move along.
I do have a couple questions actually. You know what I want to talk about too.
Yeah,
Jamaica to 100th Street. I know I brought it up, I talked to Justin before too, and he told me to bring this up, but is there a way we can get like turn lanes to turn onto 97th Street and to like into Anderson? Because right now you have cars that are constantly jockeying around because people are turning into Anderson, and then you get the people that, they bounce around, and then that last entrance, or the only entrance to Anderson, is so close to 100th Street. So people really cut over hard, because now you can't make the double right turn.
Yep.
So is there a way we could do that or look at doing that?
so that actually is something that I know we talked about before, so that's something that we are gonna have included in our planning. We've got that stretch of road there that hasn't been redone. We kinda did everything up a little south of 95th, so that's something we are looking at with the trails there and the right-of-way we have, is when you do a rehab on that road, which it's gonna be due in the next handful of years to some degree, even if it's a mill and overlay. We could add right turn lanes. Right now, they haven't had them because it's just those 2 through lanes, right? So the right lane kind of serves as a right turn lane, but you're right, traffic's been growing and growing and growing, and is that something that we really have to make that area better, so.
And then also on Ideal, because you said they're gonna widen that street.
Yep,
Is it gonna widen like on both sides, or is it gonna widen just to the west or the east? Because there's a path right there that everybody uses. Will that be going away, or is that staying, or?
yep, so it is gonna widen to the east, and when we're done, there'll be trails on both sides. So right now, the right-of-way is pretty tight. And with North Point, we actually acquired 100 feet of right-of-way, so a nice big wide city right-of-way. So we're gonna widen to the east, that way we can kind of maintain that existing road, and then we'll actually build trails on both sides. So there will be a time when we're widening that trail will be gone. But when we're done, it'll actually have trails on both sides.
And is that gonna be the same on 100th Street trails on both sides?
Yep, yeah, so when we're done now, 100th is kind of in a hodgepodge. We'll have 100th on both sides and 105th. And then they'll actually go up that Hadley Avenue as well, the number 4. So we'll have a really nice trail connectivity in that area once we're done.
All I got.
Sounds good. I said, we'll be back. I'll be back, and Lee Mann, he's our project manager for that 3M settlement. He'll be back later on in the fall as well, so. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. At this time, I'd like to move back to number 4, which is the approval of the agenda. We had a
He made a motion and I seconded.
We had a motion and a second. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And also the approval of the minutes of 3/21/22. We had a motion and a second on that. All those in favor of the minutes? Aye. Opposed? And at this time, I would like to tell everybody know that we do have a quorum. So that we're going to continue on with the new business, which is Deputy Director Renzo.
I'm not gonna do any presentation from the stand, but I'd like to call attention to the memo that I provided you with the 2 revised hunting maps. As you can see, every year we go through this process of reviewing developments within the community to decide whether or not hunting of both bow and arrow and rifle can continue in specific areas. This last year, we made some modifications due to developments. The big development was, of course, North Point, and 100th in the ideal area. There's 3 changes, the archery, first parcel's off 62nd and Jensen. Oh, sorry. The big one was North Point Commercial, south of 100th Street, east of Hadley, and north of 105th. Was what Ryan kind of had on your road construction. North Point, that whole area is now purchased, so all the rifle hunting would be removed from that area and a lot of the archery as well. And then one change to the firearms. Three were the archery, one was the firearms. The firearms was off 100th and ideal, and that was the old Gene Smallage development just east of Ideal. And he sold off that land to a portion of North Point and also to the city for the well. So those are the big ones. As far as any issues we've had regarding complaints, as you can see, 19 and 20 were really good years for us. We had 0 complaints relative to hunting. We'd made those modifications to the ordinance a few years ago, and in reality, we've had a lot of areas that have no longer be allowed to hunt just because of the development, so we tend to get less complaints because there's less areas. We did have the one complaint last year at the old Mississippi Dunes site where somebody had trespassed onto that property. The owner of the property was at the house at the time, heard a gunshot, tried to find somebody. He found someone running across in full camo. We were never able to identify that person. So that was the one complaint we had. And again, with the development of Mississippi Dunes, that'll be removed from hunting from the map itself. So what I'm looking for from the commission is approval of the 2022-2023 maps for both firearms and archery that were attached to your memo.
Before we go on that, I'd just like to make a note that on the archery, that there is one parcel of land on 85th at Keats that is not part of the archery anymore. Because you have to have a 5-acre lot to be able to hunt on it, correct? That's why all those along 19 there, on north and south of 85th are allowed to have archery except for the one lot.
You might have to circle it for me.
right on the corner of 19 and 85th, right on the other side of the entrance here. It's where the lot was split. There's two, it was a 5-acre lot that's now two and a half acre lots. I just wanted to clarify that that is gone as far as archery hunting on that particular piece of property.
Correct, it appears with the map, it is gone.
Okay.
I don't know when that was done, if that was last year. I think that would have had to have been last year's
Years
change,
ago.
2 years ago, yeah. Yeah, that's marked no
Yeah,
archery.
it wasn't more of, it was more of a statement for anybody who's ever listening that the reason why that is because that's that was a lot split.
Correct, it was the one lot and he sold to his family.
Yes.
And they built the one house.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool, thank you.
Sorry to make you look so hard here, Greg.
I was like, are my eyes tricking me here? I'm really struggling with this map.
And maybe just a quick follow-up. Remember we had that group come in and talk to us about sharpshooting to come in at Ravine Park?
Right.
Was that this year? Is that successful? Or
That
last
was-
fall?
That was last fall and it was successful. It was I think the one-day hunt. I don't know how many, I had never received a report back from Washington County relative to how many animals were taken or the numbers or anything else. I did
Okay.
not ever receive anything from them, nor did we get any complaints. I don't know if Ryan, if you got anything from them.
No, we never got any complaints, but I could reach out to their staff and just get a follow-up from them that I could have at the next commission meeting, to see how many deer were taken and if they had any issues, so.
Okay,
Yep.
I'd just be curious.
Yep, no, I can do that. I can follow up with Dan on that, so.
Any other questions? Then I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the hunting maps as presented.
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else you need from us, Greg?
Nope, that's it, thank you.
All righty.
Just
Moving.
not any more map looking, if I could exempt myself and my eyes from that.
All righty. Do we have any old business? It looks like we do not. Any response to previously raised commission requests? We have none. Commission comments and requests. I'd like to let everybody know that one of our commissioners, Jeff Padell, has resigned from the commission due to health reasons. That's why he's no longer here with us, and just like to wish him well in whatever he has to go through. Staff updates.
All right, so first thing I want to talk about is the all-commission meeting, which we did put a flyer up at the seats there tonight. That'll be on June 2nd, here on 5:45, starting at the River Oaks Golf Course. So that's where, something we haven't had in a couple years with COVID, but we get all the commissions together, the council and a lot of staff, just to talk about a lot of things that are going on in the city. The connecting with the city council and some other things, that's going to be more different stations that'll have with staff and council members where commissioners can get information on lots of different things happening around town. Then we'll have dinner, more of a construction update, so you guys got a little preview on that here tonight. And then a lot of talk about recreation in Cottage Grove. So our Parks Director, Zach Doctor, will be working on that and talking about, where we are today and some big projects that they see coming down the line and how we can fund those and what's going to happen in the future. So that'll be a really good meeting. Hope everyone can attend that, and we'll look forward to seeing you there in June. We also had our spring cleanup last Saturday. Another successful cleanup. Weather was really nice. It was about 75 degrees. It was pretty windy, but it kept us nice and cool. We did top last year's number a little bit. We had about 800 cars last year. This year we had 820 that we had come through. I think people are starting to realize, so we added a third loader station last year and we could cycle through them a lot faster. And then the afternoon, it was a pretty, not a lot of cars, right? So I think people were coming back for a second time and a third time. So it was really good. All Public Works, Parks Maintenance staff help out with that, along with all the supervisors. And, we have a good time with it. Grill some brats for everyone to eat. And I said, another big success. So look forward to that again next year. We did get done with spring flushing, finally, about a week ago. That was a challenge this year. We just couldn't get started because sweeping was pushed way back because of the weather. And then we kept having below freezing days, and we don't want to be flushing when it's below freezing and, making icy conditions on the road. So for me anyways, that was about the latest I've seen flushing done. I'm sure it's happened in the past in May, but it was good to get through that this year. I touched on it a little bit, but I was just going to mention again, a lot of the challenges our folks are dealing with: inflation, material availability. I mean, it's really hitting us hard this year. Even things like our trucks, we had pickup trucks on the docket for this year, and we can't even put an order in until December, and we might get them in December of 2023. We had 2 plow trucks on the docket for this year that we were hoping to have this November, and now we're looking at maybe of November of 2024. So a 2-year delay on our 2 new dump trucks, right? So that's 2 more years we have to keep the old dump trucks up and running and maintaining them, and there's a lot of cost with that. So it's been a real challenge and something our staff keep dealing with it, and I know it's everyone's dealing with it, but just thought I'd mention some of those kind of crazy numbers and things that we're dealing with. And that's through state contracts. So we buy those through the state contract with the state of Minnesota, is where that comes from. I won't touch on the other construction stuff because I gave you a good update on that, but one thing I didn't mention was Hardwood Avenue. I think you probably saw was closed the previous week. That was for utility connections for that new apartment building where they had to cross the whole road. And once again, there just wasn't a lot of room. We had looked at options to keep one lane open, but do you keep one lane open for a lot longer versus, having that safe work environment with the trenches to cross the road? Now it is still 1-lane traffic. They're doing turn lanes for those buildings, so it's 1-lane traffic for a 4-week period while they get those turn lanes done. And the last thing I want to touch on is just it's National Public Works Week this week, starting today. So the council did recognize that at their last meeting, and we'll be having a lunch for all of our folks down there on Wednesday to thank them for all the hard work they do throughout the year. So looking forward to that. And with that, unless there's any other questions from the commission, I'll turn it over.
What time is lunch?
11:30. And actually, it's National Public Works Week, so anyone from this commission, if you want to stop by, 11:30 to 12:30 is when we'll be doing lunch. So feel free to stop by, have a sandwich.
Well, thank you for everybody for all that you do. Thank you.
Little update from fire. 3 new part-time staff that I talked about at the last meeting. They're be starting the FTO process soon. We completed the final round of interviews for our 2 full-time positions today. So sometime this week, the members of the group that went through the interviews will get notified by HR that they're moving on in the process and the backgrounds will start. We're currently down to 25 part-time staff. When the 3 part-timers that start FTO will get complete, we'll be up to obviously 28, but that's well below still what we're used to. And we're hoping that here in the near future that another ad will go out for hiring of part-time staff so we can get some interest coming back into town and getting people to help the city out. We still have 2 full-timers out on medical leaves, which leaves us staffed at 8 right now out of 12 to work shifts. And that is combined shifts on 24 hours between full-time and part-time. We try to maintain at least a minimum of 4, but we would like to run 6 or 7. But that's been a little tough lately with the full-time staff being out for various reasons. Calls for April, for EMS, we had 302 calls in April. And for fire rescue type calls, we had 75. So that's pretty consistent with where we've been the last couple of months. We haven't seen a spike yet, and we're not really hearing anything with the new COVID variant where that's coming in for EMS calls yet either to us, but we'll see what happens in the future. Some other items, we're starting a staffing study committee. We're looking at a 5-year plan for current staffing needs, and we're then looking out at 10-year beyond the 5 to see for future needs. With the amount of calls that we're experiencing currently, we believe that in the future, we'll need to consider increasing full-time staff members to bolster the part-time staff, as we feel is a necessity, because the trend nationwide is that part-time numbers are diminishing. They don't have the time commitment anymore, and people are not wanting to get into the field for some reason. We just haven't identified why that is. It's not a Cottage Grove thing, it's not a Minnesota thing, it's a national thing. Almost every agency is dealing with it, and if you've seen some news stuff in the recent years, a lot of agencies are going to strictly full-time that were never full-time before. We're trying to not have that happen, and we're doing the best we can to make sure it doesn't, but we don't know what the future holds. But we're one of the few agencies in the East Metro that does our own EMS, and we do our own transport. So a lot of agencies that are going full-time are West Metro agencies, and they don't have ambulances, and they're still coming to that conclusion to provide us safety in their cities. That's what they're ending up having to do. We're using a group of consultants called Ethical Leaders. We've used them before for training of our officer staff in leadership capabilities, and that's also, we've used them in the city as a group that help with our organizational study. We had the chance to utilize our live fire instructors outside of our department recently on Saturday. Newport Fire hired us to utilize 6 of our certified live burn instructors for a burn they held on Saturday. Was told it was very successful. They appreciated the work our group did and how professional they were. Went off without a snap, and there were no injuries, so that was good to see. This week, much like the Public Works Week, it is also EMS Week this week. So we'll be doing a little recognition with some of our staff as they come on shift, and give them a little token of our appreciation for all the hard work they've done, not only this year, but all the years that they've been here. So far this spring, we've hosted about a dozen EMT students through the 9/16th Century College EMT program. Many of them being Park seniors right now, looking to graduate, and a couple of juniors. We're trying to open their thoughts and ideas to maybe joining the fire department field, EMS field in ways. By doing it while they're still in school, they can sign up for a program. They or their parents do not have to pay for their EMT education. It's taken care of through the school district. So we're getting back into the schools to get them interested in wanting to possibly join the fire department after they graduate, or at least get them exposed to EMS, and it could maybe further a career choice for them down the road. So lastly, we've learned that the amount of time to replace an ambulance, much like dump trucks, is extended. We are planning to replace an ambulance in 2024, and then talking to our vendor, that party said that there's going to be a significant increase because of aluminum. Most of our ambulances are made of, the boxes are aluminum chassis, and he said to expect a significant increase in aluminum. But he also said that the replacement schedule is crazy long, just like Public Works is going to deal with on their dump trucks. And he had said that if we ordered within the next few months, we might see an ambulance at the end of 2024. So this is not just EMS thing, it's fire trucks are the same way. A lot of the fire truck manufacturers aren't even giving end dates. I just heard from an Apple Valley chief that said they ordered their fire truck 2 years ago and they still don't have an end date when they're going to see it yet. Wow. So pandemic has done a lot to the supply chain, and it could cause some issues for, I don't think so much for us. We might be able to deal with it a little bit, but if it gets too long, then our repair costs could go up, but we'll see what happens on that. Other than that, I don't have anything else in fire EMS, but I will take any questions if you have.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, from public safety, I'm not going to go through a ton here. I just want to kind of make you aware of a couple of things that we've done here. Within the last 6 months, we have obtained through the DRMO program, which is the one we talked about with demilitarization. We received 2 barricade trailers. So it's a large trailer that the military and others use to secure entrance and exit points during civic events or other things. So you can actually, instead of putting up a little barricade and someone drive through it, right? we got these barricade trailers. So one is, I believe, 16 feet in length and the other one's 12 feet in length. Both of them came, they're trucked in, and Public Works is doing some minor fixes with hydraulics and other things. But you'll start to see those most likely at Strawberry Fest, where we usually blocked off the entrance for where the stage was and all the people were. You're starting to see nationwide kind of this vehicle-borne issues with people deciding they want to drive into other people. We had it in Waukesha, Wisconsin. We've had it at numerous other locations. So these trailers that we were able to get from the military for basically shipping costs, which are literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment for a very small fee. Those will start, you'll see that at Strawberry Fest. So they come up and down. We'll be able to put those up at night. Nobody will be able to enter and exit during any of the events that are occurring. So any problems with vehicles, we can probably rest assured that they're not going to get through, and they're
Where do we
tested.
store all this stuff?
Those are at Public Works right now.
Is that where they're gonna stay then?
Yeah, it looks like it's a trailer, it's on wheels, and you basically hydraulic jack it up, the whole wheel carriage unbolts, just disconnects from that actual unit, and then that drops right onto the ground.
Okay.
And then you jack it back up, put the wheels back underneath it, and haul it off. So we're one of the only ones, actually the only ones that I'm aware of in the East Metro and not the metro area that's gonna own their own. Sometimes those are rented out for a very large sum of money, so we'll hopefully get
Is that in our
those.
future to rent them out or no?
That's kind of what our goal is to recoup any of the costs that we have put into them for the hydraulics, and then the shipping is to utilize those throughout the county for events. So that's one good piece of equipment we just got. We did a test for an RMR, which is a ruggedized miniature reflex sight for our handguns. So a red dot sighting system. We talked to the commission, I think it's probably been 6, 8, 10 years ago now, where we put a red dot sighting system on our rifles that allows officers to be more accurate at distance at night and other things. Well, they've come out with a new RMR for handguns now. We did a trial with our firearms instructors 2 years ago. The trial went well. We allowed people to shoot with it. And what it really does is it allows, during a critical incident, the officer to concentrate all their sights on the person versus on their sights, right? So you superimpose the red dot on the sight that you're trying to look at. So if I'm looking at somebody from 20 yards away, I can see their hands and I can see everything, versus staring at my front sight, trying to align it between my rear sights to get a good sight picture. I have to have a hard focus on my front sight. And then I lose the visual acuity of my subject's hands or anything else that are below my line of sight. So adding these RMRs allows us to now have that vision at a greater distance and cover more, right? So my focus is truly on the subject, not on my sights any longer, and I just allow the red dot to be within that sight picture. So we did training. We did not have money at the time to purchase those, so officers chose to buy those out of their uniform allowance. So they saved up their monies for 2 years, and they made the purchase out of their own uniform allowance. So we went through, and we have 24 guns now that are out on the street out of the 44 that were purchased on their own. That's something we're gonna write into the budget, obviously, to reimburse them into their uniforms so they can buy their other equipment like pants and shirts. If you can believe, one pair of pants and one shirt costs about $140 now. So the uniform allowance goes quick, but they understood that it was an important thing that they wanted to add, and we've always, as a department, looked to improve any piece of equipment that can save either a subject's life or our own. So this is one of those items. So you'll start seeing that. It's a little different look, but you'll start seeing it nationwide. It really does allow the officer during a split-second decision to see what they need to see versus seeing their sights. So just a kind of a neat thing that we'll be moving that into hopefully next year's budget as a budget addition to look at for us. The other things that we're working on right now is prepping for Strawberry Fest, taking a little bit harder look at our security and the concerns that we have throughout the country that are occurring. If you didn't just see the news, Blaine had to shut down their civic event and call for a unlawful assembly and basically shut their entire carnival down.
Isn't this like the second or third time that's happened in Blaine, though?
It's happened in different areas, so it's starting to become more of an issue, and it's not indifferent than the street racers that come in and take over an area. We're having these roving groups that just decide that they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and there isn't enough cops to stop them. So we're taking a hard look at our security for Strawberry Fest, and part of that is the barricade trailer, right? Trying to make this a safe and secure event for everyone as we move forward with the changing times that are occurring within our not only our community, but really being on the forefront of adding that safety feature. So that's ongoing. And then today we had our first budget meeting. Can't wait, already ready to go, right? Everyone loves budget time. So we're starting with that full on, moving forward with the budget. The officers that we had hired, we talked about this. One of them, the lateral entry from Washington County, she is now on solo patrol. We call phase 5, which is essentially we watch them now for a full year and evaluate them on a weekly basis, but they don't have anyone in the car with them. So their solo patrol is what we call it, phase 5. So she began that and she promptly got married. So now we have a different name. So Officer Wiley is no longer Officer Wiley, it's Officer Whalen. At least she started with a W and ended with a W, so it'll be easier for me to remember that. And the other officer is on starting phase 4, which is, again, this is solo patrol, so you'll see that person in with an officer that's wearing plain clothes. And that's an evaluation phase, make sure they're ready to go on their own, then they hit that phase 5. The other two, we think, if all goes well, they've been doing very well, that by July 1st that they'll be on solo or phase 5 patrolling. So that's where we're at with budget, keep hiring. We hired a couple CSOs over the last few, had a couple CSOs leave for other jobs, full-time, in other agencies. So that'll be an ongoing, constant battle, because we think we have really good CSOs, and when we don't have openings, they get hired elsewhere very quickly. So, any questions for me?
I was just gonna ask why they were leaving, but I think you just answered it. If they have an existing position here and they're leaving, are they leaving from a money perspective or a proximity to?
No, they're community service officers, so that's the pre-law enforcement, full-time, they're not licensed,
Okay.
different pension completely. It's your full-time career job, right?
Okay, yep.
So if you can go and start your career somewhere,
Sure.
they're gonna wanna start it, and if we don't have openings,
Got it.
you know, we've had many of them say, I really wanna work here.
And
If we don't have an opening, it's a good problem to have,
Mm-hmm.
is that we have really good candidates and have had really strong candidates where you see other parts of the state and area that literally can't find a person. So our community service officers, if they decide that they don't wanna wait or can't wait that year or however long it is before we hope we have an opening, they get snapped up really quick.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at. We wish we had 4 openings, because in the next 6 months, we're gonna have 4 exceptional candidates that we don't have an opening for. So,
Thank you. Anything else for Rick? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good, sir. I can't believe you came up to this podium, but all right.
All right. So in the street department, as Ryan talked about, sweeping was kind of a issue for us this year with the cold weather and rain. So usually we could accomplish that in about 4.5 days. It took a little over 2 weeks. Buckthorn pickup, we had a really successful year. This year, normally we have about 2 days of pickup. It turned into almost 5 days. So a lot of people got out and removed buckthorn, which is good. For Arbor Day, we gave away 100 trees and delivered them to residents. We had, I believe it was between 500 and 600 people register, and we randomly drew 100 of them out, so a lot of people interested in trees. Traffic counts we just completed with after our sign guy, Robert Bray, left, we have a person standing in there, Dustin, and he did a good job. He got 28 counts done ahead of schedule. Today we also started crack sealing We're installing 34,500 pounds. The main roads we're doing is 80th Street between Jamaica and Ideal, Hinton between 70th and 80th, and East Point Douglas between 19 and Walmart. The rest will be just some random neighborhoods. Also, we fell over 110 trees, so we had a lot of tree holes to fill. We put down over 300 yards of black dirt. Wednesday is our annual, as for Public Works Week, we'll be out repairing any plow damage we did. So we'll be filling in that damage, and then we'll be hydro mulching the rest of these holes with the sod damage.
Well, like I ask every year, are you gonna fix that hole in my backyard that your snowplow did? Go ahead, go on.
Duct tape.
All right, duct tape, got it.
Fertilizing, we completed fertilizing, and today we also started spraying weeds. So that's about where we're sitting in Public Works for Street Department right now. We also brought on 5 new, well, I shouldn't say returning summer help, and 2 forestry interns, which are new to us this year. So, any questions for me?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Councilperson Justin, council comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As has been previously mentioned, we find ourselves today in the middle of Police Week, Public Works Week, and EMS Week. So we are celebrating law enforcement here in the city of Cottage Grove and throughout South Washington County in the area. We are celebrating our public works professionals, and we are also celebrating our EMS professionals. And of course, each of those as individual units are critically important. And when you look at a city or a municipality as ours, those tend to be sort of your biggest budget areas. So between these 3 departments, public safety, and then of course, public works, et cetera, you know, that's a good chunk of our budget. So we definitely want to make sure those folks feel appreciated, respected, honored, because they do an awful lot of work on behalf of the community. Part of Police Week is what they call Law Enforcement Memorial Day, which officially was designated on the 15th Sunday, but many agencies celebrated it on Friday the 13th. And if you're unfamiliar with Law Enforcement Memorial Day, I'll try to do it justice, but I would ask Captain Renzel to chime in if I miss anything. But really, Law Enforcement Memorial Day and Police Week in general are intended to really remember and honor law enforcement who have laid down their lives in protection of our neighbors and our friends and the communities that they serve. And unfortunately, it seems like every year we have more and more terrible stories, and I'll just tell one briefly here about a very recent tragedy where we had a retired law enforcement officer who was serving as a security guard in Buffalo at the grocery store, where an 18-year-old assailant in body armor decided to attack the shoppers of the grocery store and ended up, I believe, with 10 casualties, one of whom was the actual retired police officer who attempted to neutralize the threat. But unfortunately, the assailant had body armor on, and so the rounds from the retired law enforcement officer's revolver were not, or pistol were not able to penetrate the body armor, and then he was subsequently killed. I just want to mention the fact that Law Enforcement Memorial Day is a really important day for us to remember that just like our EMS professionals, firefighters, et cetera, those who work in the public safety realm, and I believe Gary was a firefighter for the city of Cottage Grove for a long time. You know, I don't know if you guys remember, but Rick used to be a police officer in St. Paul Park. He actually is still a police officer who serves part-time at the state fairgrounds. You know, these are people who, they're wired differently than the rest of us, because when the danger happens, you know, we run away from it and they tend to run towards it. And they're the ones who are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice in extreme circumstances, like I just mentioned in Buffalo, in order to hopefully, you know, save the lives of innocents who might be subject to whatever the situation might be. And I have no doubt that the fact that that security guard, retired law enforcement officer, did what he did heroically, saved many lives because he was attempting to neutralize the threat. The threat obviously was directed at him, and I'm sure that let many others get to safety. So I would just ask that at some point in time during your week, if you could, just, take a moment and remember those who do the very difficult job of either law enforcement or EMS or firefighters who, are in the most difficult and challenging situations that could possibly be presented to us. And with all of their training and their education and their skill, they remain on the front line of keeping the rest of us safe. I also wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of the things that we've got going on in the city based on some of the council meetings we've had since our last get-together. So if you hadn't heard already, the city council did take up the issue of chickens and ducks for urban farming, and we did change our ordinance to allow for backyard chickens and backyard ducks in residential properties. We also took up the issue of food trucks or mobile food units here in the city of Cottage Grove, and we did update our ordinance to allow for food trucks in the city, provided that they're licensed, et cetera. There's a maximum of 5 licenses that we will provide on an annual basis. And this is one of those things that we'll monitor as time goes by to make sure that any further tweaks in the ordinance or changes that need to be made are handled, in a very thoughtful, but yet also in a very quick manner, should they become necessary. We also paid some respects to a couple of employees who left us. Our finance director, Robin Rowland, did retire from the city of Cottage Grove, and she was replaced by Brenda Malinowski. Some of you may know her as Brenda Pepper, who used to work for the city of Cottage Grove for many years as our assistant finance director. Brenda left the city a few years ago and became a finance director in Hudson, Wisconsin, in Little Canada, and we are very grateful to have her back. And of course, we're also very thankful for all of the years that Robin served in the finance director role here at the city of Cottage Grove. She was here for 12 or 13 years, something along those lines. And interestingly enough, being replaced by somebody who was her right-hand person made her feel really good about the fact that, of course, she's transitioning into retirement, but that the city is in very good hands. We also paid our respects to Reserve Officer Tony Hensler, who retired from our police reserve unit. Tony also has a son who happens to be a sergeant, Justin Hensler, here in the city of Cottage Grove. Tony gave us many years of dedicated service and a lot of volunteer hours. So we're gonna miss Tony quite a bit, but we're thankful for all that he did, and we're very pleased that his son Justin continues to work for the city as a sergeant. One of the things you heard talked about here was, the fact that it's a little bit tough to hire in today's environment. And one of the ways that we try to alleviate that is by ensuring that we are constantly on the lookout for good quality talent at all levels of the organization. We mentioned the police reserves, we mentioned the CSOs or community service officers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Captain Renzel, but I think 3 out of our last 4 that we hired were CSOs, is that right?
So over the last 20 years, we've either hired lateral or community service officers. There's been, I think, 3 anomalies out of 20 years that have come just from the outside with no Cottage Grove experience and no law enforcement experience. So we hire heavily from our CSO position.
Yeah, we tend to be a department that is a desirable place to be. And so we feel very grateful that, we're able to get that institutional knowledge that you get when a person who has served as a police reserve or a CSO, like Evan Davick, for example, served in both of those roles and is now a regular police officer here in the city of Cottage Grove, grew up in Cottage Grove, went to Park High School. We find that we get very, very lucky in having those kind of folks who want to stay here in the city. And that's true of all of the departments that we have in the city. I just mentioned Brenda, you know, it was her desire to come back, and we're very happy that she chose to do so. One of the things that we do in the public safety realm is we have what's called the Woolery Scholarship through the Public Safety, I don't know what to call them anymore, Public Safety Board, or are they still the crime board? Public Safety Board. So they're gonna be awarding 2 scholarships on June 15th, and you're certainly welcome to come to that council meeting if you'd like for that presentation. And those will be going to young people here in the community who desire a career in the public safety realm. And this is one of those things that we hope to award every year to a couple of worthy candidates. And it's nice to be able to help those young people pay for a little bit of their education and, you know, hopefully have that sense that, hey, you know, this scholarship came from my community and it makes me want to stay in my community and work in my community. A couple other things that I wanted to mention to you is Discover Cottage Grove, which is our tourism group, which I'm a part of. I'm actually the vice chair of Discover Cottage Grove. We have our next meeting tomorrow morning, right there at 7:30 in the morning. We will be celebrating Cottage Grove on June 11th with the St. Paul Saints. We have a Cottage Grove night at the Saints game at their ball field in St. Paul. And if you're interested in attending, you can certainly purchase tickets through the St. Paul Saints website, and there is a link to the City of Cottage Grove's Cottage Grove Night. So if you purchase your tickets for the Saints game through that link, $2 of every ticket purchased through that link go to support our Cottage Grove Lions Club. So there's actually a charitable contribution that goes there. And of course, as a member of the Lions, as is our friend Mr. Serpico here, one of the things that we do is we give all that money back to the community in a variety of ways. So if you're interested in coming to the ball game, you can do it that, or you can apply to actually win a 5-pack of tickets for free through discovercottagegrove.com. You have to enter by the 31st of this month in order to hopefully win that 5-pack of tickets. But it would be a great way for you to be able to come out, enjoy some fun at the ballpark, and celebrate your community. There's going to be a lot of fun events that night, and it's all about the city of Cottage Grove. So as part of the Discover Cottage Grove team, I'll tell you what, we're really looking forward to it. It was a fun partnership that we decided to get into with the Saints, and we hope that we'll be able to do this for many years to come. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is you've heard some conversation about the budget. We never stop with our budget conversations. The way that our city council budget conversations occur is we have a strategic planning session in January where we get an initial sense of what does the staff see as primary needs for the community. And then we talk about what are the cost of those things. And then again in about March or April, when we get some numbers from the county on property valuations, which I'm sure all of you saw in your mailbox, property valuations are very high across the county. We then have another conversation about, with property valuations going up X amount of dollars or going down X amount of percent, what does that mean for us for our budget? There's a very distinct line between the value of your property and a budget levy. They are not the same thing, and a lot of people struggle to understand that even if my property went up in value, that doesn't necessarily mean my taxes are going to go up. So that all depends on the levy, and the levy is what we as a city council are responsible for setting. So we start to have that conversation in April once we get that information. And then as the next few months go by, so we're now in May, we have a little bit of a chat about different things every week, it seems, from May until about September or October. I don't know if that's how the school board did it, but that's how we certainly do it. And we try to have everything buttoned up by September, October timeframe. Some years are more challenging than others. And then, of course, we set the final levy for the following year in November, and we vote on that. So right now, what we're talking about are kind of the price of things versus the value of things, because there are two different trains of thought there. And we know that there are essentials and things that, as a municipality, we need to operate. For example, we have to have ammunition for the police department. We don't have Barney Fife working here. We don't just give them one bullet. We have to make sure that they have what they need for training and for life on the street. And the cost of that right now is higher than it's been in the past. You heard Ryan talk about commodities like steel or the price of aggregate or asphalt or oil or fuel. We're part of a fuel consortium, so all the fuel that we use to fuel our city vehicles, including our dump trucks and our plow trucks and our Bearcats and our everything else that we have, that all comes from one pump over at Public Works, basically. And we're part of a fuel consortium where we try to buy at a certain price point on an annualized basis. So attempting to do that correctly is, a little bit like trying to time the market. So we have to think about those things. The fact of the matter is this is probably going to be one of the more challenging years in my 13 years as a council member that we've had to deal with from a budgetary perspective. But what you can count on is that when it's all said and done, the city of Cottage Grove, as it always has done, will ensure that the taxes that people pay here per capita are amongst the lowest in the county, Washington County, and that you will find tremendous value for the services you receive living here in the city of Cottage Grove. We have no question that our tax rate, which is already very low, will go down significantly this year, because that is a math equation based on what's the budget levy number and divide that into the value of your properties. But what we never want is we never want that roller coaster where it's real low one year, real high one year, real low one year. We try to be steady so that people don't get too excited about whether or not the bobber's going up or down too much. But we will make some really difficult decisions this year. I have no question about that. So more to come on that. And if anybody ever has any questions, certainly you can reach out to any one of your council members. You can reach out to any staff member. We'd be happy to try to answer the questions for you. The last thing I'm going to talk about is Strawberry Fest is coming up. You heard Captain Renzel talk about the security for Strawberry Fest, et cetera. This will be the first Strawberry Fest that we've had in a couple of years. We're still going to have the fireworks. We're still going to have all the fun and the games and the bands and all that kind of stuff, and we really want people to enjoy themselves. So mark your calendars for Father's Day weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll make sure that we send a nice check to Sven Sungard so we get some good weather for that weekend. But I have no question it's going to be one of those sorts of situations where people have been, cooped up for a couple of years, and they're really going to want to come out and play. So I'm looking forward to a lot of fun. And this is our community event. It is what we do to bring community together. It's one of my most favorite times of the year. I'm sure it probably is yours as well. So, we're going to make sure as a city that it's safe, that it's fun, and that everybody can come out and have a really, really good time, because let's face it, we all deserve it after the last couple of years. With that, I'll stand for any questions that you might have for me.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No.
Oh,
Any
well,
new business? Like
There's always a new business.
like a Quick Trip? Is that coming yet?
Haven't heard anything about Quick Trip. You and I are of similar minds. I love Quick Trip. In that, I worked in that business for a long time, and in that business, Quick Trip is seen as sort of the standard bearer. And when they come to the community, they tend to come in twos. They like to build on either side because, they like to try to control the gas price in town. And they tend to be a little bit of a lower gas price than some of the prices we're seeing today. So we'll both keep our fingers crossed on that. The Pizza Ranch restaurant has determined that they are going to build this year. They took a little bit of a pause because of COVID and trying to find materials and labor and all that kind of stuff. So they'll be coming online this year. You guys know about North Point, that's gonna be huge. We've got another expansion at Anderson Windows, that's huge. Our EDA, Economic Development Authority, will be in Las Vegas later this month for the International Council of Shopping Centers Convention, which is the largest convention of service providers in the world. And I've had the benefit of being there when I was part of the EDA. It's a great opportunity to sell the city and also to attract interest from other potential end users. We've heard a lot of different things about, different home builders, apartment builders. We had a item on our council agenda at a workshop here a couple weeks ago about potentially a new subsidized senior living center where some people who maybe can't afford that market rate senior center pricing will have an option. We've got Dunkin' Donuts and that team coming to town, so that's gonna be exciting. So, there's stuff popping all the time. There's always a lot of rumors. I don't like to share unless I know it's happening. And sometimes people get a little squirrely and they like to share before it actually, the ink is dried on the contract. I don't want to do that because then you're making promises that you're not going to keep, and people tend to frown upon that if you're an elected official and you do that stuff. But it's a fun time to be part of the Cottage Grove City Council. We are definitely an attractive place for lots of different end users, both residential and commercial right now. Anything else?
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
I'll move for adjournment.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? I guess there is no, meeting's adjourned.
Hi, thank you.